Hello, hey, welcome to another episode of Entrepreneur Pit Stop. I'm your host, DiNardi. It's a place that we pull in, take 5 minutes, take a break from the rat race of, the entrepreneur life, all the hustle, the bustle, the what to do's, the what not to do's, and how to be's. Sometimes you need to take 5 minutes, not just for your company, but for yourself. Check in, check your tires, check your engine, see what your team's doing. Find out what you need to do, adjust, but just breathe. Take that 5 minutes to refocus, get aligned, and reorganized. Well, that's what we do here at Entrepreneur Pit Stop. And we take that 5 minutes. We focus. We speak to specialists, hear real life stories, and get some insight, tips, tricks, and strategies for living a successful entrepreneur life. And we never like to leave the show without giving you something that you can go home, walk away with, and actually implement, an actionable step. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back with Entrepreneur Pit Stop. And today's guest is Kasey Snyder, and we will be talking about internationalization. Hello, I'm your host, DiNardi, with Entrepreneur Pit Stop, and we are here today with Kasey Snyder. And we are going to talk about internationalization. Hello, Kasey. How are you?
Hi, Dean. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Thank you. So, are you now? Are you with a company of your own company, or you do freelance? Like, what is it that you do?
Yeah, sure. So I established my own company here in Finland in 2018. So we have this sort of light entrepreneurship opportunity. So it's mostly a part-time consulting type of business. And then earlier in 2025, I started working with a company that's based in New York called Global Edge Markets, or GEM, as we call it. So now I've teamed up with GEM to support Finnish and other Nordic companies with internationalization.
Nice. Okay. Internationalization in Finland. That's like a scary topic.
Yeah.
There's a lot of apprehension going abroad, to leave the borders. And especially, I know that you specialize with going to the States. Um, and especially going to the States. I do somewhat of the same work, also helping companies adapt and go to or market, communicate with bringing their businesses to the States. And so many people, they're like, oh yeah, let's go to America, but then they're like, it's like they don't even put the toe in the water. It's like they just walk to the edge, and they're like, wow, the water looks really nice, but they have no idea what the temperature is.
Right.
Um, so listen, let me say, maybe we can remove some of those apprehensions and make it sound like it's a more accessible journey, and more of an accessible market. Um, so if I had to say, um, what would you say, like one thing that you think is an invitation for Finnish companies to consider when they want to go abroad? You could pick your market. I don't care, but maybe the States, if that's your familiar ground. I mean, that's more mine. I've done some work in the EU and the Nordics, but it seems like they're more comfortable with that.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think that the couple interesting things to think about regarding Finnish SMEs or scaling growth companies, particularly I think the market is so small here that a lot of entrepreneurs and founders recognize that they have to have a global strategy right from the beginning. So even if they're not a SaaS company, something that can be, sold and distributed online, they still know that they have to be looking at greater market potential and not focused on just Finland. So that is an advantage for us, of course, because it does open the conversation. And there are a lot of other organizations and like associations or research groups that want to try to help companies right from the beginning to kind of be ready to commercialize internationally. So that's a good thing. But then, like you said, there is a really strong feeling of apprehension. Companies often don't understand really what the product potential is. They know what the R&D is. They understand a cool thing that they created or something very innovative, but they don't get the practical application of it or how it's going to work either in business or in a government setting. And I think one of the kind of long-standing issues, and this comes from years of research and the Uppsala model, is that you should be basically looking at the next country which has the closest identity or cultural familiarity to your own. So I think that's why a lot of Finnish companies think, let's go to the Nordics, we'll expand to Sweden, or, we'll look at Norway, or then they start to think maybe Eastern Europe or Central Europe, Germany would be really exciting. But I think the challenge is that it is just as demanding to right size your product for another Nordic country or another European country as it is to go to a massive market like the United States. You already have to be thinking about, language, regulatory, financial issues, because the currency is changing for the most part. The language is very much changing. And then, of course, there's regulation differences between every country. So instead of playing it safe and looking at a local market that is probably only slightly larger than the market you're in, we really need to be looking at the US early on and thinking, what is the game plan going to be to access a really large potential client pool and also investor opportunities?
You said something that's really interesting. It may be easier to go to your neighboring country, familiarity, the market, half the work's done. However, your ROI on all the time spent, all the money spent entering that market, your market is so small that you might not even make profit. You may not even, get green. Whereas like you can spend the same amount of time, money, and effort going to states on a market that's 10 times the size and increase your revenue potential by 100 times easy.
Right, right.
Because like you said, okay, yes, the language is all different, but once you get international language for the most part is English. But then when you go into another market, you have to hire people that speak that language if you're going to sell in that market, right? Whereas most people speak English, you don't need to do that. It's already there, it's available, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not now a third language or what have you. And all the regulations, government, finance, accounting, policies, they're not all the same. Even when you look at Finland and Sweden, they're so close. They're like, step siblings, but yet they're such different because it's a different bloodline. There's a different DNA to it. So not everything is the same. There's going to be a lot of hassle, but your market, you're only probably increasing your market size realistically. I'm going to guess to say 5%, just because you're adding that amount of population to the market you already have in your home country that's just about the same size. You're not really gaining much traction.
There's good opportunity if you can find a pilot project in Sweden or Germany that can help you then launch internationally, because I think that there's a limitation to the number of companies that can support you here in Finland just to do a test or to get your MVP. But after that, I think then you realize that, yeah, exactly, you're spending a lot of time setting yourself up in that market, but then you don't have the reach, you don't have the potential for the ROI that you're really looking for. So yeah, I totally agree. You're right.
Yeah, and that's a good point. It's a good place to just get a pilot program, just to get your feet wet, but don't jump all the way in. Use it as as an outline. Just use it as an outline to get them to go to the bigger market. Because I think some people, when they go international in the Nordics, especially maybe like the companies I've spoken to in Finland, a lot of those companies, what they'll do is, a lot of the Finnish companies I've spoken to, I think they have tunnel vision. And they're like, okay, I'm going to Sweden. That to them is going international. Okay, I'm going to Norway. I'm going to Denmark. but they start the conversation off, oh, I'm going to go Europe. It's easier. The EU. Yeah, but the EU is all different countries. Every policy is different. Every rule and regulation is different. Customs are different.
Right.
Everything's different. So, it doesn't diminish the challenge of going international generically. I don't care where
Right.
you're going. Listen, yes, you talk about Asia and that's a whole different beast. That's another part of the world
Sure.
that
Absolutely.
economy, and that's a whole different game. But when you're going to the States, I think from my experience is that it's just as much of a task, but your reward can be, tenfold easily
Right.
quicker. You return
Exactly.
on the investment.
Yeah. We have a very active role with the EBAN, the European Business Angels Network. And what I love about that is I think that family foundations or firms or syndicates built of angels is a really great place for a company to go for resources when they want to go international. And by working through somebody like EBAN or one of the local FEBAN or SWEBAN or whatever, you can start to build the connection, a foundation for financing from your quote unquote home base or the European side, and then bridge that to the American side. And one of the things that I've learned through working with EBAN is that there is so much friction in between the member nations. So like you were just saying, it's not so simple to start selling or exporting from Finland to a Germany or a France. There is a lot of restrictions and hiccups that are involved, and they're doing a lot of work to try to improve that, which I think is humongous, because we should be looking at ourselves a little more cohesively and trying to support sovereignty and the growth of the innovation, like no doubt. But right now, the world we're living in right now, we have to recognize that there are a lot of limitations, and you have to be able to think a little bit bigger. If you're going to put the effort in, then yeah, you might as well start looking at the markets. In
right,
North
you
America.
want a return, you go put the effort in, you want to get paid for it.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
it's as simple as it is, right?
Yeah.
But that's interesting, though, too, is, when you look at the EU was designed to create this cohesiveness, and yet it doesn't exist as much as they had intended for it. And at this stage of the game, what the EU's, what it was 95, so you're looking at 20 years. I mean, there should be more cohesiveness with this international, trading ability and inter cooperation. And
Yeah.
there's not. There's still a lot
Yeah.
of obstacles.
I agree. I would have thought it would have gone a little faster.
Right. I would. Yeah, you would think that they built it as a purpose to do this. Now I'm gonna talk for a second about the pink elephant in the room, because from what I've now talking to people and just listening to the temperature in the room and everything, there's a lot of apprehension about going to the States, because politically what's happening, then with all the customs and the tariffs and everything else, even though it's been up and down, who knows what it is one day to the next. I personally, when you're a business entering into the States, I don't think any of that matters. It really doesn't matter. It's an indirect impact. It's not going to affect you. Now, you tell me if I'm right or wrong from your experience. But from mine, it doesn't affect you as a small company going into States to get established, to do what you got to do, unless you're bringing in boatloads of something and you have to, hard ship merchandise. Most of any company that's going in is not shipping hardcore products by the boatloads, and then there's plenty of manufacturers over, on that side. So it's an obstacle that can be overcome more easily than most people believe or think. And the government is so big, it doesn't care. There's so many little. In the States, we're broken down judiciously, from big to small governing agencies, where it's not like one or two. We've got like 5 or 7. So the only one that you have to deal with as a company going into states is on the lower end of that judicial ladder. It's either on the bottom or like one ring up. You're not dealing with the problems and the issues and the images that you see and everything that, whether you agree or disagree, are all about the top echelons of government.
Right.
And they
Right.
really don't affect you as a small company looking to go into the States that directly. They may affect a policy that you're looking to use. And that's where you need to look at it. But it doesn't affect, that's an indirect effect. And that you have to do that due diligence no matter what country you go into when it comes to policy and, acceptability and what have you. So I wouldn't let whatever's happening in politics, whether you agree or disagree, whether it's in, when you're looking at it that way, you have to break it down for really what is the aspect of it that will affect you or not, and how much directly or indirectly.
Right. Exactly. I agree. I think you nailed it right on the head when you're describing the state level and the makeup of the regulatory requirements when it comes to importing or doing business in the United States. I would say for sure, the first thing to keep in mind is that you should not be going it alone, just the same as I wouldn't, arrive in Finland and think I could handle this myself. Like, obviously, no, there's a lot going on. It's not our culture. We had to kind of learn the ways that things are done. And it's the same in the US. But then you kind of have to understand that each state has its own special industry that is really relevant and is really, impactful to its economy. And then there's a lot of opportunities at the state level for not only grants and incentives, but partnering with other companies. So, right off the top of my head, I'm thinking in Texas, okay, Texas is like such a beast, but there is huge manufacturing around Waco, and they are very interested in bringing more international companies. So if I were like looking to go into the manufacturing sector, I wouldn't be looking broad strokes at the United States. I would be looking at Texas and thinking,
right,
okay,
segments.
What are the implications if I set up my shop here and then I start looking to, distribute from there or find, sales channel partners from there? And, you also mentioned as well, it doesn't have to be all at once. So you start off by setting up your business entity, by doing your importing and selling, and then you figure out your manufacturing line and who you're going to partner with and distribution. So it is a multi-phase process. And if you can find product market fit and you can find your audience there that you're looking for, then that creates the opportunity for you to move from one step to the next. Couple things that I would say that I always look at when I'm talking with a company. One, do I know the economic development team in that state? Because probably I do. I've been doing this a while and I've been working with a lot of different industries and states, but I would start there. That's a very friendly conversation. Economic development people are lovely. They are very open. They're excited to see what's going on. And they also know a lot more about their state than you ever will. So it's a great place to start the conversation, ask a few questions, and then they will direct you to the people that maybe you want to start talking with. So that's the first thing I would look at. Then after that, we have an amazing customs broker on our team that I can always flip a question to at any time and say, like, hey, how does this look? Or is this insane? Or is this terrifying? Or, does this make you panic? And she's fantastic. And she'll say to me, like, oh boy, this is going to be a big one. Like, hey, we're going to need some time. Tell your client that they've got to budget X amount because we have to do a deep dive and we've got to figure out how to get everything coded properly, classified. I mean, you're going to save yourself like 50 grand on one shipment if you just do everything correctly the first time. So it's well worth the money. But you have to think those things through. Then there's other things that you can be shipping that, it's a really no big deal. And you just find, a third party that helps you, and an OEM or somebody that's just going to say, no problem, we can handle this, and it gets put through. So those are just the things that I would ask up front and make sure that you understand your market in the US on a state level, where you would want to set up shop, where you'd want to start doing business, and then where your customers, how you reach them from that location.
Right. And that's important. And that's why And that's why actually consultants like us and you exist. We
Well,
help
yeah,
direct.
there
Well,
is a
no,
need, there is
because we help
opportunity.
direct you to the right segment, the right market. Because in the States, you have to break it down. So the States are, the East Coast is very different than the West Coast. Okay. The North is different than the South. And then you have the Central, and Central is also segmented into the 4 different areas. And each one of those areas, so if you got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different areas that you could break the states down into, that's 4 different industry strong regions. They
Mhm.
don't all, they are not all strong in the same, um, in the same segment in that
Right,
region.
right.
They share. You got tech on one side, you got industry in another, you got business and construction in another, and
Hmm.
you got manufacturing. You have, they're all different. So you know, you're not tackling, when you go into the States, you're not tackling the big beast. You're just looking at one small area, and you're going to, because also look at, when we're talking about judiciously the governing entities, and, now look at it from a business perspective. Where do you get this information? You don't go to the government sites. You have to go to state sites
Right.
to get this information. So
Yep.
you're not even, you don't even, you never have to approach the big entities. All of your information is when you know which region is strong for your business segment, you go there locally. I mean, you could even go as small as a town or city. You don't even
Sure.
have to go to the state because it breaks down that low. So it
Hmm.
makes it, it's like, I don't know, I forgot what the saying was, but it was something about, you know, uh, now I forgot, and it's going to bother me. But you're you're not eating the whole brownie at once. You're taking
Uh,
bites.
oh,
You're
yeah.
taking small little pieces of it. So you're going for the morsels. You go down. You approach what's digestible.
Yeah.
You
I
approach.
think the saying is about eating the elephant. Like somebody will
Right,
say to me, "How are you going to approach this?" And you say, "Same way
right.
I would approach eating an elephant, one bite at a
Right, right,
time."
right, right. That's it. I didn't think that that was it because it almost sounded a little too gross, but I guess it,
It is gross.
because I
Yeah.
guess I went right into like the mental image of eating an elephant instead of
Yeah,
like
no, nobody wants
metaphorically. I was
that.
like,
No.
couldn't they come up with something better than that? I mean,
Yeah.
that's just like,
The
okay.
a
But
brownie would
yeah,
be way
it makes
better.
sense.
Like, how
Right.
would I
So
eat
it's,
this
you're
brownie?
taking, right. You're not eating something so large. You're just taking small little, bites of it. So, you know, it's wise to, really get an understanding of what you're getting into versus what you think you're getting into, because what
Hmm.
you think you're getting into is always a lot worse or better, depending on your
Right,
perspective. And,
right,
and that's key. It's based on your perspective, and you cannot be driven to make a business decision only on your perspective. You know, there has to be, there are certain parts of business you can make gut choices with, but this isn't one of them. Just look at it for what it is. Take it and accept it for what it is. Learn the information that sets the precedence for what it is, not what you think, you know, and you'll find that going into markets that seem more scary or too big, too arduous, are actually probably more beneficial and more advantageous for you to go into, because you'll get a better ROI and the access. Listen, let me tell you something. The United States, right or wrong, but the United States is a startup. It's a business. It's the largest business. One of the, well, who knows? China's coming up real, but it is one of the largest top 3 business economies in the world. They only, listen, it's a commercial state. It's a commercial country.
yeah,
Commercialism.
capital. Yep.
It's what they're founded on. It's what they breathe, eat, and drink and smell.
Right, right,
It's what they do. So why not go there? I mean, there's plenty of people. God knows there's plenty of people enough, to sell whatever you want to sell,
right,
and
for sure.
they'll buy it. Whereas like out here, you're like, well, who's our market? Will they buy it? And now when you ask that question out here, because the population is a lot smaller, you get a lot less people answering that question yes.
Exactly. Yeah. And then are you going to sell through S group or K group? There's just not a lot of
Right.
diversity
You got
and a
two
lot of
options.
options.
I
Yeah.
got two options on one block. I got about 500 in one town, let
Yeah.
alone the state.
Yeah.
I mean, you
We were
have
laughing. I went to Joensuu last week for a conference, and that is a 6-hour train ride from where I'm from, closer to Helsinki region. And I was telling my friend that I was going, and she said, "Oh, great! I hope you can take in all the sights." So after laughing about the pine tree, the birch tree, and the lake that I'll probably see, then it was like you can go to the Sokos and you can go to the K Market, and
right.
you're like, yeah, you have to make a big effort to find something that's very local and interesting, which I actually did. I found a really awesome pizza place on a recommendation, but it's not so easy. Everything else is part of the brand or the chain that's operated, by a greater organization within Finland. People, I think, kind of take that for granted, and they don't understand the capitalistic approach that the US really,
Right.
really has. And like you said, the consumerism, the way that the buyer really influences what products are put out, how much they want to have diversity and interesting and unique things. And, not just talking on a consumer level, but B2B is
B2B
kind of
too.
the same.
Very competitive.
They want that. They want uniqueness and something interesting. For
Right.
sure.
Right. B2B, definitely very competitive. They want to have the best, better than their competitor.
Right.
Whereas
Yeah.
out here, it's like, it's not so competitive, but you raise an interesting point though too about Finland, how every town you go to, there's always the same, I mean, okay, reliability is kind of nice, but after a while,
Yes,
it's,
definitely.
there's
But
a
it's
point where it's
redundant.
like,
Yeah.
Give me something different,
Yeah.
and that's one of
I
the
agree.
nice things is like, you can go to another town and you may not see any of the stores you're used to in your neighborhood.
Sure.
Yes, we have big chains, but there's a lot of towns that don't have those big chains in them. They're just small towns or, whatever, and they, or they just have their own. A good example, Lidl. Lidl is now in America. Okay, they started on the East Coast. And they were only I think they started actually in New Jersey or Pennsylvania, somewhere in that area.
Yeah, there's one in East Hanover. I think my mom has
because I know
told me.
there's
So we were laughing about
there's a
that.
few down the shore,
Yeah,
and I'm like, but they weren't in any other state, and
right.
they only had a few, so they weren't in every town or city. So there's not a lot of that familiarity. There's a lot more diversity.
Right.
And you
For
have to
sure.
look at the diversity as a plus, as to offering you a broader market, more opportunities to sell your product, whether it's B2C or B2B. The potential, the potential is massive. And there's not any other specific hurdles than you would not, that you wouldn't experience going into another EU country.
Exactly.
They're very similar. They might be slightly different, but generically they're the same.
Right. The other thing I think that is kind of funny about, we were talking about how there's so many similarities across Finland, and you can kind of keep finding the same places and products everywhere you go. But then again, when it comes to like the business society, I feel like things are very clustered by region. So, the ecosystem that works in Tampere versus Turku versus Helsinki versus Oulu even, they're so specific to the region, and you have to make inroads and get to know people in each location in order to have progress. Even though this is such a small country by population,
very
it's
segregated.
Still very segregated. And I think people don't understand that in the US, we have a much, much better network for getting to know people and building relationships. And another thing that I would recommend to someone that's thinking of entering the markets there is look at the National Association for whatever industry you want to be a part of, or the product that you fit
They all
into.
follow the same beat.
Yeah, get to know
Yeah.
them. Like, go in at a very high level. I mean, maybe the national conference is massive, but even if the national association is hosting something regional, get in there and start making friends. That, again, those are spaces where people are very open and friendly because they're curious. They want to get to know other people. Most of the time, they're willing to have a drink in the afternoon or the evening and socialize a little bit. But as soon as you start telling your story and talking, that person is immediately going to say, hey, have you talked to this guy? Do you know that guy? Have you thought about here? Even if they say, oh, no way, this market is brutal. You're never going to want to come here. But they'll say something else like, hey, I would check out, XYZ. And I
Right.
wish
That's a lead.
that happened more here in Finland. I wish
Right.
there was more collaboration where people
Yeah.
would be honest to say, hey, that's not our strength, but oh my God, my friends up in Oulu, wow, they're killing it. But it's
Yeah.
not. It's very,
No, it's
very
not.
close to the chest.
Very close to
and they're
the
very
chest.
protective.
Very, very protective. Yep. And listen, it's very, well, don't confuse close to the chest protective um, what's the word? Oh my God, all these words are like, I need my cup of coffee. Usually every time I do a podcast, I have a little my Mumi cup and I have my cup of coffee or my tea cup.
Sorry.
And I'm
I don't
like,
have anything
where's my
either.
tea? Where's my tea?
Yeah. Refocus.
To competitiveness.
Okay.
Because in the
Okay.
States, right, we're highly competitive,
Sure.
but we'll talk about anything and everybody, right? So
Sure.
you'll get good information from those nuggets of conversations, and they'll still pass you on to somebody because in the States, every company thinks they're the best.
Of course.
They're ego-driven. They think they're
There's
the best. They're
confidence.
number one. They're looking to be the best,
Right.
and they don't care. They'll tell you about Bob because they're better than Bob.
Exactly.
But
That's a really good point.
But if you pay attention, they just gave you insight to another potential customer or a reason why not to go a way you were thinking of going.
Right. Exactly.
I
agree.
That's one of the things that I actually really miss is like the networking, the communicative aspect of just society, business, whatever over there, because, I used to take, when I first came to Finland, one of my things was I would take companies and I would represent them at events. So
Sure.
I specialize in event marketing and promoting, independent companies, going there, making the connections, relationships, whatever. And because they don't want to do the small talk, they don't want to do the meet and greet, they just want to stand there in their booth and, just sell. I'm like, oh no, you got to talk to people because that's where all the insight is. That's where all the information is. Nobody's going to come to your little stand if you're just waving a flag. This is what I have. You have to, you have to take that. You have to send the bait out.
Right.
So,
exactly.
And I just love the networkability of the States because. Listen, even if you don't like talking to people, even if you're shy, you still have to make the effort to get them. Look, think of research development, right? You're going in there and you're just talking to ask and answer questions. I don't care if you're making lists in the back of your mind or on your sketch pad. The point is, that's where a lot of the information is. And these events in the States, they're all over the place from coast to coast, north, south, east, and west. They're all year round. Yes, the event season has a high and low. So September and October and April and May are the highest seasonal globally.
Definitely.
But they happen all year round. And these events are ideal to go to and just talk to people, find out what's going on in your industry. And what's good about it is they're not only locals. A lot of people from other states and other areas come into these events. So you get a broader sense of your industry at one event.
Right.
I mean, and that's, oh my God, you could capitalize on that. If you really know how to strategically take that information, take that insight, what do you do with it? Where do you go with it? What does it mean? And how do you make it work to your advantage?
Yeah.
I think there's.
If I had to give advice to anybody that's going into this for the first time, I would say, target an event that you think is worth your energy, and do a little bit of homework. Like in advance, identify a couple of companies or people that you want to connect with. So set a couple of goals for yourself and ensure that you are not going to walk out of that event without having made a few connections. Set a number like, hey, I need to do this. I need to talk to 5 people and have 5 good conversations. And then after that, then you can just let it run. Then you can just be open. You can be curious. You can be, I'm sorry, I overheard you saying this. Oh, I'm excited. I just arrived from Finland and I wanted to learn more about that. And then the people will just kind of take you in because why not? They have nothing to lose. They're probably not shy or intimidated. But, just do a little bit of homework ahead of time so you kind of can set a couple of goals so you're not going in completely blind or unprepared. And then the other thing, oh my gosh, you have to do the follow-up. Like when you leave the event, you have to connect to those people afterwards. You have to follow up with them on LinkedIn. You have to send the message. Hey, here's the pitch. Here's the info I was talking about. Here's what I was telling you. What's the next event you're going to? Who can we set up a call with? Whatever it is. But I feel like that is another issue here in Finland. It's like, I met you at this event, and then people are like, well, yeah, I'll see you again at the next event in 3 months. And you're like, no, like I'm going to be around. I'm going to be bothering you. I'm going to be persistent, and keeping top of mind.
It's also good to keep in mind though, too, as you talk about the follow-up, is that the people that you talk to at these events, they expect it. This is part of the culture. We know when we go to events, whether we have a stand or whether we're somebody walking around, we know the culture and we know there's going to be 13 people following up. I'm going to follow up. I follow up, you follow up. It's going to be this seesaw. It's going to be back and forth. You have to talk to 50 people to get 5 people to be interested. It's the same story, but we know the culture. We know what we're diving into, and that's why there is such an openness, because there's no surprise. There are no surprises. And another thing, you say to do your homework. That's excellent. And what I would suggest is don't just do your homework. Make an appointment. Call 5 companies and ask and just confirm that they're going to be there. And you know what? Find out where they are. Find out the name of the booth. Find out one of their lead people who are going, and go with a name, go with a contact, and go, listen, hey, I spoke. And you don't even have to speak to anybody. You can find this out on usually company pages or whatever, but it's always nice to call and find out. They like the recognition. Somebody's interested in us. They're going to the show. Ooh, they may even give you a free pass. Because sometimes even if the show costs €20 and it's not a $5 to get in, and it's not a $500 event, a lot of these big companies, they just have hundreds of passes to give out to people to come to the event, or they may invite you to their cocktail hour or whatever. And that's where you get to meet people, contact them, and make some connections. If it looks like that, do that with 5 people. I mean, come on, you got an event that's got 500 people. You could do it with 5.
Exactly.
Because our events are a lot bigger than theirs are here.
That's true.
So take that and run with it. Run with it. Use it to your advantage and just do that. Do your market research, figure it out. You don't have to go with promises that you're going to sell something to them next week if you're not that ready. But line it up. Get their feel. Are they interested, not interested? What's the matter with it? What could it use, not use? How does it work in the industry or not industry that you're looking into? There's so much that you can get from that.
I have a good example I can share. So we recently coordinated a 2-week-long event with Business Finland for their Work in Finland project. And it was a huge initiative for them to go and spend 2 weeks in the U.S. And of course, for any company to make the investment to the travel resources, hotel accommodations or Airbnb or whatever you're doing, and then to attend the event, for sure. Business Finland had their eye on the APS Global Physics Summit, which is a really big deal, big opportunity, massive conference in Denver. And there were going to be a lot of really awesome Finnish companies there as well. So that was the core. We knew that was the priority and the most important aspect of it. But if they're going to be traveling all that way anyway, then we need to maximize their time
Yeah,
there.
yeah, sure.
And one, there is an incredible network of resources for Finns, for people coming from the Nordics, people coming from other parts of Europe. So contact those people as well. Say to the consulate in New York or Houston or Los Angeles, or your foreign affairs teams, and say, I'm coming. What do you have going on? Or who do you suggest I talk to? Or what opportunities might there be? They might have something going on. And then in the case of Business Finland, we said, okay, so you have a massive event you want to go to. Do you want to meet with the colleges? Do you want to meet at the career centers and get to know people and talk about your initiatives and the jobs? Oh, that sounds like a great idea. Okay, well, they're easy to get in touch with and they're easy to book meetings with. So we had, 5 or 10 meetings for them set up at various different universities. Then we looked for smaller events. Oh, there's a cocktail reception happening here. Oh, we can set up a networking event there. And then we set up, so they had something to do every single day of that trip.
Right. Busy.
And I don't think it was too much or exhausting.
Things. Right.
Yeah,
but things
right.
that matter, right? Things of value. Right.
Exactly.
It wasn't just going and seeing some factory somewhere. There are actual impacting, resource information gaining events. There was something.
Exactly.
Right. And you also mentioned about resources for people coming from the Nordics and Finland and stuff like that. It's not just the resources that we have for people like that, but we also have resources for people coming from those areas, because there's a huge trust factor, and Finland and people in the Nordics, they should lean so heavy on the trust factor, because people trust you, the states, citizens, the government. There's such a big heavy trust factor to lean on it. That's a good quality to have.
Right.
When you make a promise or you say something, you're going to follow through. If you say it's not ready, it's not ready. Whatever you do, there's not a lot of fat that you have to cut through.
Right.
If
you find people
that offer
understand.
that help. That's why we offer that help. We want more of that. So
yeah.
Use it to your advantage.
The Finns are terrible also when it comes to underrepresenting themselves in this same vein. Like, they will tell you that it's like 90% effective or 65% effective. And you're like, dude, just say it's effective. Like, who cares? Like, you have to stop being so accurate all the time.
Okay, but that's a different story, because that's more like not about their honesty. That's more like about their perfectionism. Because because my experience of Finns are way too perfectionists, and something doesn't. First of all, perfectionism doesn't exist. Okay, and catch me on my other podcast at Theatrics of Success, and I'll get into that whole thing about psychology and how perfectionism is a total made up fallacy in your mind, and it doesn't exist. Okay, it cannot exist. So first of all, stop being like that. But getting back to the point is that, there's a point where it's good enough and it works good enough and it's a prototype or it's a functioning workable and it needs work, but you can't get it past that point until it's in a working environment. And what they need to do is they have to realize that they need to get it into those working environments. And in the States, people are willing to implement things in that working environment, knowing that it's not perfect. Something's going to happen. Something always happens.
Right.
So sell it. And something that they don't do here that we are very used to, and I don't know if it's good or bad, but it is a matter of fact, is we pre-sell. We'll sell something we don't even have.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I mean, and people will buy it.
Yeah.
So
I think
listen, if you have it and it's on the shelf and it works, oh my God, you've got half of us beat. Just sell
a long time
the
working
damn
in
thing.
hospitality, and there was a lot of unbuilt ballrooms that I sold in my life. I can promise you that.
Right.
Oh, you have an iPad or a sketchbook or something, and you're like, this is going to be amazing. And you should
Right.
sign this contract, and all 500 of your people should be willing to show up, and you're going to spend this ridiculous amount of money. And we haven't even, dug
Yeah,
a
but
hole yet.
you know
But
where that
that's the way
comes
it
from?
works.
You know what's good about that? Because a lot of people in the States, they're visionaries and they can see it happening. And if
Sure,
they can
definitely.
see it happening, they will help make it happen. And that's what companies over here need to realize, that they're stepping into a realm of visionaries and make it happen type people. You talk about, they have all these silly things on social media with like the rainmakers and the money and all that. That's what you're stepping into. You're stepping into a realm where people will help you make what you want have happen, because he may not have the capability, but he knows somebody who does. And the thing is, there's a lot more optimism and there's a lot more progressive forward thinking
Hmm.
about getting things done and having it now
Right,
attitude over there than you
right,
have over here.
right.
And you
Definitely.
have to realize that when you're going into that market, that's one of the attributes that you're gaining, that you're swimming in. And
Yeah,
you have to consider that. It's not
yeah,
the politics, it's not just the customs, it's not just the policies. You're getting all this mindset and all this attitude that drives um, potentiality and that drives success and that drives the capitalism that happens over
right.
there. And
Exactly.
that's worth sometimes and quite often more than any other aspect, because that's what conquers all those other obstacles,
Mhm. I agree.
you
Yep.
know? And, well,
So it
on that
carries you.
note, bing, we're done.
Yeah, no, that's a great note to end on,
No, but
honestly, because we know the market potential is there. We know that it's worthwhile from an ROI perspective to put your resources into that market instead of, playing it safe and looking close to home. And you're going to go to a place that's genuinely very friendly, very open, and very optimistic. I wouldn't go it alone because you could get taken advantage of very easily. But
yeah,
to start off, yeah, you just got to go and you have to be prepared and you have to take a look around and see what the options are, because there's a
right.
lot, a
Listen,
lot there.
and listen, I gotta tell you, I mean, listen, okay, let's be fair, right? Let's call a spade a spade. You and I are a little bit biased, right? Two
Okay.
Americans talking about going to America, right?
Of course, I understand.
But the truth of the matter is, the things that we've said are facts. Environmental considerations that sometimes that people over here don't see or observe. No
Right,
market is perfect. Yes,
right,
there's always obstacles. Um, Sometimes, yes, is it easier to start off small than thinking you're going into some big thing? Yes, but sometimes we make things bigger than what they are also. So you have to break it down and see what the reality of it is. Um, but there's some things that you also can't deny. The size of the market, the accessibility of the market, the openness of the market. These things are globally recognized and accepted. So, don't deny it, embrace it, and, make the move, you know, get on a plane, man, make the move, go there, I would rather see somebody spend a couple thousand to take a plane ride, go to an event, do all that networking, marketing, do all that stuff, then assess where you're at. Because also, one last thing I want to also mention, and you can comment on. I think it's a lot less expensive than people believe it is to
hmm,
go there. Everybody thinks it's so expensive and it costs this to do that and everything. And you can start off small. Nobody said you had to bring the whole camp in one day. So start off
yeah,
small. You can take small bites of that elephant, right?
exactly,
So
exactly.
it doesn't have to be millions of dollars investments to just jump. You know,
Right,
so even a small 1-2 man operation can make it. It's about
yeah,
doing it smart That's, that's when you seek people like us, to help guide and or whatever. I don't care. It doesn't have to be us. Go find somebody over there. It doesn't matter. But the point is, it's open, and you have to think about these things.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And there's a lot of great resources out there. There's a lot that, AI can help you with now to make the research go faster and to get you sort of better educated on what's going on. And then I would say you really so benefits you to just have a local contact that you feel confident with and you can trust to help you just navigate those early stages. And then, yeah, like you said, you just kind of jump in and see what it's all about.
I am going to make one comment. I have another comment.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Real quick, though. But when you do, and if you do seek somebody out, don't seek out in your comfort zone. Don't find a Finn living in or a Swede living in America because,
Got it.
no, find a local. So find somebody because here's the thing is, even if you still have, when you guys get together, you kind of go back to your roots, and now you're not in American setting. You're now you're like visitors. They're not going to give
Exactly.
you the same value as an American driven business or consultant person will, coming from that area or that culture. you know Find somebody that you can talk to. Yes, be comfortable with them. Yes, feel that you can feel trustworthy and safe and whatever. Absolutely. But for gosh darn sake, do not find another cultural counterpart, in that country, because I'll tell you, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot.
Yeah.
It may feel good at
And
first, but in the
right.
long run, it will definitely hurt. Just something to think about.
Hmm.
I'm not saying it's 100% with everybody, but it's 98%.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
something to keep in mind.
That's fair enough. That's the same reverse when you're relocating here to Finland. I think it's awesome to find a couple of friends from the US, friends from other English speaking countries, anywhere that you're like, hey, this makes me feel comfortable. I'm at ease. There's a level of normalcy here, which is really nice and
Sure.
wonderful on a social or a friend level. But when it comes to getting down to work and doing business, yeah, you're exactly right. If I just stayed close to the Americans that I found, then I would not really be integrated into Finland and I wouldn't be a part of the society. And totally the same in the reverse. I agree.
Right. Right. Absolutely. So listen, let me ask you one last thing.
Okay.
If You know what? I think we gave them enough things to go home with and do. I was going to say, I want to leave them with one last thing, a nugget that they can go home with and apply today. But,
Mm,
I mean, we really did. We really gave you a lot to think about. Listen, you want an action step? Take the action step we both, Kasey and I discussed on going to an event. There's an action step, you know, find an industry specific, a good size event, nothing too small. Doesn't have to be too big either, but good size. Contact 5 people, and whatever. Take 2 people
yeah. Do
with
the
you. You
homework.
don't need a whole team of people. Go with one other person. Don't go by yourself. Just because it'll make it easier. And go with somebody who's different than you. Use some diversity in your team. Diversity in thinking and also mindset and approach. Have that counterpart to bounce things off of, and to have different personalities also conversationally when you're there. Um, so there's your takeaway. You
Perfect.
know,
I love it.
but so Kasey, I
Yeah.
want to thank you very much. I really enjoyed that conversation. This was a good, fun, but important conversation. So I think our viewers will really get a lot out of it. And
Great. Yeah. I
I
loved it.
want
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. And I want to thank everybody out there for listening to Entrepreneur Pit Stop, where we take 5 to pull over and get some tips, tricks, and strategies on business development, entrepreneurship, and everything around it. And once again, thank you very much, and stay tuned.